Hello. So we are going to be talking about trigger stacking now because trigger stacking is really important for everyone to understand, but also the next few days are going to look about how we can mitigate trigger stacking, what options you have to mitigate it, what options for activities you have that are going to benefit your dog at different stages of trigger stacking better than others, and all of that fun stuff. So if you've never heard of trigger stacking before, what you need to understand is that when our bodies are taken away from baseline, so for the scientists amongst you, when our bodies are away from homeostasis, stress is occurring. Now, that can be when good things happen as well as bad things happen. So if we are at the doctor's and we're getting very, very nervous for whatever reason, that's fairly understandable that our body would be releasing some sort of stress signals. If I spot a spider, deadly afraid of spiders, have jumped out of moving cars to get away from them, I am inherent, stress is immediately in my body, and a lot of people can understand that. But if I go to a dog show, I'm stressed. I might be having a really good time. I might be really enjoying some of it. But often dog shows can be quite overwhelming. There's lots of different information to process. Quite often when I'm going there, I've woken up earlier than I would normally. I am potentially stressed trying to find the location of where the dog show is if it's one I've not been to before. Maybe the sat nav yelling at me whilst I'm trying to read the road names is not particularly relaxing. If you're running late, that is a massive stressor for me. I despise being late. I would rather be early or not turn up at all. All of these things, and I absolutely adore the time I'm with my dogs, but actually some of the process of getting there and things like that can be stressful. And when it comes to exciting things, it can be mildly exciting things, like getting your favourite meal can be slightly exciting, especially like going out for a meal feeling like you're treating yourself. That can take your body away from baseline and can make you feel a little bit, essentially stress hormones are released in that time. But also if over a year ago, before I got Sonic, if someone turned up with Sonic on my doorstep and said, here's your puppy, I would be so excited. Now, if someone did that, the puppy would probably be a bit of a mild stressor because I already have one dog and I am not over Sonic being a puppy yet. Different things can be stressors at different times, and there are different scales of. So for someone that's only mildly afraid of spiders, a teeny weeny spider might barely register as a stressor. For me, there was one on my desk. Alice will attest to this. There was one on my desk whilst we were having a meeting, and I fully jumped up, screamed, and ran that way because it jumped. So even though it's probably the size of my nail, it's a silly thing to be afraid of. I know that logically doesn't make me feel any better about it. That mild stressor for one person, strong stressor for me. If I was tied to this chair and hadn't been able to move, that strong stressor becomes an even stronger stressor for me. So these exciting things happen as well. So I've said that one already. All of these exciting and not so exciting, slightly unpleasant events cause stress hormones to be released in our body, and these accumulate over time. They don't get released and then immediately go away. The evidence that we have for how long it takes these hormones to go away is everything from 3 hours to 3 days. Now, I don't know which one of those is more reliable. I've sort of seen them thrown around a little bit, seen a bit of evidence for all of them. I tend to say, you know your dog's best. You know your dog's best. You know what is a severe stressor for them. You know what is a mild stressor for them. You know if they're a dog with a naturally high stress level, they're probably going to be trigger stacked more quickly. And small events are going to contribute to their stress hormones increasing a lot more than a dog that's generally more chilled out and less likely to have those stress hormones in their body as part of their baseline. With Pumbaa, I know that if he has a dog bark at him on the street, that most of the time barely registers as a stressor for him. But if we're at a show and dogs bark from vans at him, that he does not enjoy. And I can't really blame him. Half the time it makes me jump out of my skin. So I know if he's been at a dog show and it's been one where we've got like a whole line of vans with dogs that are going to bark as we go past, obviously I will try and mitigate that as best I can, but sometimes you are parked exactly where you don't want to be parked. And I know he will be significantly more reactive after being at a show like that than at that dog that barked at him across the street. That would register as a major stressor for him after the event of being at the show with all the dogs barking at him. And these things, I know Pumbaa from Baseline, he's probably going to be fine by the end of a walk if he has a dog bark at him from across the road. Pumbaa from Baseline that's been to a show needs a few days after dogs barking at him from vans. So it's one where you know your dog's best, you know what worries them more than others, you know how long it roughly takes them to recover from stressful events, and this can change over time as well. When Pumbaa was a dog that had more behavioural problems than he currently does, he took significantly longer to recover from stressful events. Sonic is a dog that's always been pretty chilled out, and it takes her an afternoon to recover from stressful events. I'm trying to think, maybe when she was in season, it took her more than an afternoon and it was a couple of days. But outside of hormones doing weird and wonderful stuff to her trigger stacking, I don't think she's ever taken more than a couple of hours. So it's one where you really need to know your dogs. You really need to start paying attention to if a dog barks at them, do they seem any different afterwards? How long does it take them to seem normal again? And normal is what is normal for your dog. A dog that is more inherently stressed, their normal is going to look like stressed for one of my dogs maybe, and that's okay as long as it is what is normal for your dog. And that, again, that normal can change. We can change baseline stress levels over time. So because these hormones don't immediately disappear, they can accumulate in the bloodstream, and it can take some time to have them decrease and have them get to a point where you can then start your dog from baseline again. And that's what trigger stacking is, essentially. All of those stress hormones accumulating, hanging around in the bloodstream, and making your dog more likely to react in weird and wonderful ways, do behaviours you've not seen before, be slightly grumpy about something, be slightly less inclined to do something, be maybe a little bit less social, and maybe be a little bit more grumpy about things like cuddles, which they would normally enjoy. Now, trigger stacking is hugely important for every dog owner. If your dog... daily life is stressful for everyone. Like I said, the feeling the need to go to the toilet means that stress hormones are released in your body. That happens for dogs and people alike. So daily life is inherently stressful, and it's important to learn how to mitigate that stress. Times like Christmas are hugely stressful for dogs. That daily baseline of stress skyrockets. There's a reason I'm so busy in December and January, and it's because Christmas is such a stressful period of time that dogs struggle in the environment and suddenly behaviour problems develop, or behaviour problems significantly worsen. So every owner should be aware of what trigger stacking is, how to mitigate it, what the best thing to offer their dog is if they can see that those hormones are starting to, well, not see, but if they can sense that those hormones are starting to accumulate, and help their dogs out as best they can. If you have a puppy, everything is stressful to your puppy. Adult organisms have neurological systems in place that when we experience a situation, our brain goes, not important, not important, not important, pay attention to that one, or that stimuli. Puppies don't have that backlog of information to lean back on and go, okay, that's the important bit. They go, that's important, that's important, that's important, that's important, that's important, that's important, that's important. And their entire world is quite overwhelming. So being able to help your puppies and make sure that their stress hormones aren't accumulating too much is super, super handy. If your dog has a behavioural problem, I've sort of hinted at this one already, understanding what's contributing to their stress hormones on top of the behavioural problem causing stress is really, really handy to make sure that you can mitigate any stress as best you can and prevent that problem from worsening. And this relates to the functional foundations, because the rest of this week is going to talk through how to mitigate trigger stacking, what to offer your dogs, the various things you can offer your dogs, and when to offer each individual thing. Lastly, I want you to not forget, yes, that this happens to humans as well. So the internal chemistry between dogs and people is relatively similar because we're both mammals. If you've had a really bad day with lots of stressful events carrying on, and then maybe something exciting happens, you may feel slightly more drained after that exciting thing because you've had that increase of stress hormones all day, and that exciting thing has just sort of pushed you over the edge a little bit. And there are ways we can mitigate that as well, which we'll haven't scheduled it, but we absolutely can talk about in the rest of the functional foundations if anyone's interested. So if you are, let me know in the comments and I'll get that planned for you. I hope you look forward to the next few days, guys.